Well, welcome everybody to the final week of Formula G. I am Zotomo, and I'm joined as always by Calamity. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Yeah, what a week to finish on. We are in the United States, my home country, even though I don't live there anymore. So it's be interesting to see how this thing shakes out. Yeah, any thoughts get going into this one, Calamity?
Yeah, the US is always interesting. It's a very big country, very diverse as well, going just from west to east, going from north to south. Um, Generally very well signed. So unless you're like in the mountains or in the valleys of something like, I don't know, Kentucky or a state like that, where you can just go through little villages at best 4 or 5 minutes, you're probably likely to find out at least the general location of where you are every time. Then the question comes, are the locations that you got pinpointable? And if they are, do you manage to do so? And yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty much it.
Okay, well then let's take a look at these interesting locations we had in the United States in our feature race. Let me switch over here. There we go. Calamity, yeah, round number one in the good old New England.
Is that what is that what it's called?
Oh, sorry. Yes, yes, that northwest corner, northeast corner.
Northeast,
Sorry,
yeah.
northeast corner of the United States is New England.
Okay.
All those former British colonies there. So
Yeah. Just a general about the whole seed. It was a pretty easy seed for the US, which we'll see
mhm.
reflected in the scores later on. Relatively easy to pinpoint as well, and giving us some pretty good times. And as you said, we start off with round one in the northeast in the state of New Hampshire. Probably the round I had to move the second most for. We started off on a bridge,
Yeah, yeah.
which made it, and the bridge itself also had a road going below it, which made it really easy for pinpointing at least. I think I walked south for about 500 meters to a kilometer until I found a bunch of, well, I found one sign with a bunch of cities on it. And I think I found the road number somewhere because otherwise I can't remember how I would have found the cities. But yeah, I think I found the 89, Interstate 89 somewhere because that's the road we were on. So that would make the most sense for me to find. And it had distances to Lebanon, New London as well, I think. And I think one other town, which I've now forgotten, but it doesn't matter too much anyway. And yeah, you just looked along the 89, which is in the east, in the far east of the US. And it's not a very long road, so finding the cities was pretty easy. And then yeah, you've had enough time to figure out where exactly you are, and you also started at a pretty unique. I mean, it's not that unique, I guess, where sort of immediately to your east the road makes a curve and then goes pretty straight south for a while. Now looking at it, that happens quite a few times, but only really once in the area, at that certain distance away from those cities. We then moved
Yeah.
on to round two, over on the other side of the United States in Arizona. And
Way across
yeah,
the country.
all the way across. And I do not think that location required you to move at all if you have very sharp eyes and can see what it says on the on this.
Yeah, I think I needed to move just a little bit to read it better,
Yeah,
but it wasn't necessary to move. But
yeah,
you
just one.
click one click was all you
Yeah,
really needed, if anything.
one
Yeah.
step to the side, and then you can read this the Arizona clearly on the sign. It says Arizona 77, and it also gives you distances to the towns of Snowflake and Snow Low. Very adequate names for towns in Nevada. Um,
Oh, Arizona.
Arizona, you have the same thing.
Same
Uh,
thing. I'm sure everybody in Arizona is happy to hear that. But
yeah,
you know,
it's a desert state in the U.S. somewhere.
well, I mean, no, in parts of Arizona, you got some mountains.
Yeah, you got
Well, not
mountains, but
mountains, but yeah.
they're still pretty dry. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, you didn't really have to move. You started right at an intersection, and you could, if you were if you moved to the right spot, you could read the name of the side road that went off there,
Mm.
which was Woodruff Road, I think. And
Mhm.
yeah, at that point, just look into Arizona and find the 77, which is Not the easiest task, but again, you've got 5 minutes. You're going to find it eventually. And now that I see it, actually, there is a town called Woodruff here. I don't think I saw that before, but, just the distances to the other cities / towns further south, more than enough to tell you exactly where you are.
Yeah, I mean, once you have the state and the road number, and so you can, even from a high zoom level, just scan the state looking for some of those city names and kind of zoom your way in. Makes it pretty easy to work things out for that one. But yeah, so I think our next location, round number 3, we also didn't really have to move. Smack dab in the middle of Boston, which is back over there in New England.
I mean, I had to move. I didn't have to move that far, but what did you see that made you not have to move?
Well, maybe, I mean, I guess I did have to move like a block or two.
Well, why are you two lying then? Actually,
Well, I mean,
I just opened up the location, and there's right to our sort of southwest. There's a plaque there on a building that says "Founded in Boston."
yeah.
So maybe you didn't have to move after all. But yeah, moving towards a bigger street that you can find more easily in the city is probably a good idea.
Yeah, I think you had enough information. Like, if you looked really carefully and read all the signs, you're like, oh, I know where I am. And then you just spend 5 minutes looking for the small street name. But finding a bigger road helps you narrow in the area you're looking for, and it makes it easier on yourself. But a big hotel, lots of just signs and big landmarks you can kind of easily find on the map. So
yeah, the hotel, you actually have to zoom in very far for that to show up. But I just moved north a bit and found State Street. And then when you zoom into the center of Boston, like the State subway station is one of the first things that pops up, which made finding the right place relatively easy. We then move on to round 4, back over to the west, a bit further north than Arizona before, which was in Idaho. And this was surprisingly a big problem location for a lot of people for a couple of reasons. The main reason was probably that going to the west didn't really give you a whole lot of information for a while. And going to the east gave you a sign that told you you're on the 33 in Idaho after about 20 seconds. So that was not ideal for some people. It also gave you a bit further than the sign for the 33. It gave you distances to a couple of cities that were in almost on the border with Wyoming. And then the other problem a lot of people had was that they're basically on the junction you started, there is a sign that tells you you're next to Canyon Creek Road. And there's like there's one word before it. You can see that there's a word there, but you can't read it from where you start. You can't move to a position where you can read it better. If you move onto the road, it's just Gen 1 coverage where you can't read shit. And that meant that a lot of people, probably still trying to get the fastest time possible, were caught off by the fact that there's 2 Canyon Creek roads right next to each other here. And there's one that's called North Canyon Creek Road. So that's the word that it could have been. And we were right next to it on Canyon Creek Road. The easiest way to circumvent that was to walk west about 200 meters to the river and check if there's a road between. That's the method I did. Yeah. A lot of other people didn't do that or somehow missed the other road. Maybe. I don't know. But there were, let me actually check, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There were 5 people who placed it on the wrong road out of those 2, losing 3 points in the process. So that was...
And that would include me.
Yep.
So
yeah, that was 25k hopes over for quite a few people. Because apart from you, the other 4 people who missed the road there were all still going for 25k, and they all also got 5k in the last round. So that was the only reason they didn't get 25k, which was definitely frustrating for some of them. I know Barry Fishy Bear was very upset about that because he otherwise would have gotten a perfect score in like just over 6 minutes,
Yeah,
which is,
very,
is
very
crazy,
fast,
a crazy pace. I don't know if it's actually still the current world record, but I think it is from Chicago, which is just over 4 minutes to get 25k on that map. So it's very close actually there, especially for like a random seed and like a one-off try, not going for a record or anything. But yeah, if you went the right direction, if you were thorough with it, again, it was a very easy round. I guess that's true for most locations in Geoguessr. If you go the right direction, if you find the right things, you'll get it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you see a sign that tells you where you are, what do you know? It's easy.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And then
it threw me off a little bit. Just what it looked like was kind of like I grew up in this area, Idaho, Wyoming, Colorado, Montana area, and so it was like, well, it's in here somewhere, and then I had to travel a little bit further, and I eventually found the Idaho sign. I was like, oh, okay, now I know the exact state.
I kind of like the expression. I grew up in that, or in there, describing an area that's about the size of half of Europe. I grew up there.
Well, yeah. Well, the problem is, like, I also moved a lot when I was younger. Like, I literally have lived in all of those states at some point for several years. So it was like, yeah, I grew up in Europe, basically, the size of Europe.
Yeah, it makes sense. It just sounds funny.
Yeah. I do forget, like, Montana is bigger than all of Japan. It's bigger than most countries in Europe all by itself.
Yep.
Same thing with California. And so it's just like, yeah, so.
But yeah, we then had one more round to go, which is round five in, I think that's part of Dresslerville. It's hard to really decide where these random suburbs end and where another one begins.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
But for me, it was, again, a relatively easy round. I walked west, eventually found a sign that told me we're on the 756 in Nevada. And then I just looked for that. The 756 is actually relatively small. You have to zoom in pretty far, but I found the 757 earlier, and, well, would you look at that? The 756 right next to it. And then...
I love that when that happens.
Yeah, it happens far too rarely, unfortunately, but sometimes it does. Yeah, and then I knew we started next to Kerry Lane and in front of the Cavalry Chapel of Carson Valley, which, again, made pinpointing relatively easy. I guess you could have messed that up because it wasn't, like, the easiest thing in the world because we didn't start right at a junction, but, like, slightly next to it. And also the road to the parking spots for the chapel wasn't on the map. But you had a couple of houses still to pinpoint, and I don't think anyone actually messed up pinpointing there. No.
No, I had the because of all the Carson stuff. It was like, okay, well, Nevada, Carson City, but I just wasn't able to really work out the suburb stuff, and was like in the general area, and just I basically ran out of time before I was able to get anything too pinpointable. So yeah, but yeah, a pretty good representation of the country, given that it was kind of a random seed. We had, a couple in the west, couple in the east, nothing in the middle. Maybe that's kind of a little bit lacking, but don't worry, there's not much in the middle. So, if you've ever seen one of the best maps of the U.S. to look at is a night map. So you can see the city lights. And you can see how dense the U.S. is east of the Mississippi, which is kind of that Chicago, Iowa, Mississippi kind of border, and how empty it is to the west of it. So it is really an interesting way to kind of get an idea of what the U.S. is like in terms of where people live. So
I assume it's mostly to do with both things like temperature and climate, like the soil, what grows there. I guess a bit
it's
mountainous
also just,
as well, and the like
it's
northwest.
also just space. There's like New England, like Vermont, Maine, New York City, Pennsylvania. All of those are like smaller European countries, and then like West Coast the states are all like bigger than European countries, so
Mm,
they do get bigger as you go, and
yeah.
it's less hospitable in the sense that it's just empty. There's no good, like, there's no trees for one thing. There was like I think there's like no trees from something a little bit west of the Mississippi all the way to the Rocky Mountains. There was like not a single tree until the settlers came in the 1800s, something like
I
that.
assume the settlers back then,
So
all the new expectations of this great new country, they came to about Texas and were like, "Fuck this! There's nothing here. Let's go back."
yeah, I mean that's kind of part of it too. But you had to really either want to live out there and be in the middle of nowhere, or you stayed with civilization. And so
Yeah,
yeah. But anyway, so we're getting sidetracked talking about the U.S.
slightly.
Sorry. Yeah. Yeah, but our sprint race, on the other hand, was in the wonderful city of Austin, Texas, not too far from the Gulf Coast. A very nice, warm place. Let's take a look at those locations for this one, and I think we got a little bit lucky here with the organizers being a little bit nice to us. Most of our locations stuck pretty much down and around downtown Austin, with only one real location out in the suburbs, which could definitely have been worse off.
Yeah.
But yeah.
We started off,
So.
as always, going through my list of locations.
Mhm.
Sort of in the most western location we had, just west of the city center, slightly northwest actually. Like right spawning right in front of us was a sign saying we're on 11th Street West, which pretty much meant you're done. Look for West 11 and then put a pin there. That one was actually, for me personally, that was probably the hardest to pinpoint exactly, because you couldn't really see many other buildings from where you started to help you pinpoint. You were just kind of on a straight road, a couple like 10, 15 meters away from an intersection. And yeah, that made it relatively hard for me. But still, like not hard for getting a perfect score, but hard for getting as close as possible to be further up in the leaderboard, because, well, 25k was the norm for this sprint seat. We then moved over to round 2 for me, which was on the Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, alongside the side street of Kamal Street, which was the only location I actually didn't move. No necessity there. You kind of just, Martin Luther King Boulevard is like the biggest street, or one of the biggest streets in Austin.
Yeah.
So if you've
pretty
done,
easy to find.
yeah, if you've done any sort of practice, you will know that. If you haven't, you'll probably find it regardless. But I guess practice there could give you the additional benefit of knowing that you're going to find it. Whereas if you just didn't do any practice, you might see the street and might think, okay, it might be big, but it's still just, a 4-lane road, which for a major city in the US isn't, that out of the ordinary. But yeah, we then moved on to round 3 for me, which was, as you mentioned before, the location in the suburbs in East Riverside, Altorf.
That was my location 3 as well. Interesting.
Oh, yeah. It did take you quite a bit, depending on what you ended up looking for. I think I ended up looking for Altorf Street because it seemed like the big, either that or Pleasant Valley Road. Either of those two, they're both reasonably large. Altorf is probably the better one if you know that district exists. Pleasant Valley Road is probably just purely based on the road itself, the more familiar one, because it goes like all the way through Austin up to the north as well, closer to the city center. So if you practiced, you might have seen that before. But yeah, it was definitely the hardest location out of the 5 we had. At least it was relatively easy to pinpoint. We then moved over into like downtown Austin, right into the city center, at the junction between West 10th and Colorado Street. I think I had to move a bit for the sole reason that there weren't street name signs at the junction we spawned at. I'm assuming that if you had any idea about what buildings in Austin looked like, you've had a couple of buildings there that could potentially stand out. Sort of to the northeast, there looked to be like a pretty, how do you say, a pretty easily distinguishable building.
Well, yeah, the Capitol building of the
Yeah.
state of Texas is easily on the list of recognizable buildings and capitals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you moved like one road over to either side, really, you probably found a sign with street names there. And to finish it off,
We were on the same. We were on 11th Street, right? Was the same
10th,
road as
10th
the
Street
other
actually.
round?
It
Oh, we
was
were on
one
10th
road
Street,
further
okay.
south, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and then round 5 in a park. I think that's part of the Butler Metro Park. Next to the Palmer Events Center and the Skyline Theater. Yeah, I personally I walked a bit because, I mean, it's just a park, isn't it? There's a couple of those in Austin. Until I think I went east and then found First Street south. And then I just worked my way back there, which, again, wasn't hard to do. Pinpointing was a bit tricky there because, I mean, again, not for the 5K, but for getting as close as possible. Because it looked like you were closer to the footpath, in my opinion, than you actually are on the map. But yeah, still a relatively seed in total. And yeah.
I don't think we had any locations to do with the Formula One track.
No, because that's outside of Austin.
Oh, that's okay. Well,
Yeah.
I'm still learning, even though the season's over. Well, the Formula G season's over. Formula One season's just started, actually. But I'm still learning where all these tracks are. So
Most of them are outside of the city.
yeah. I didn't even realize it before, but there's actually whole like subdivisions called MLK in Austin. I don't know why I didn't notice that. I guess I was looking too far zoomed in, but yeah, so even if you didn't know the road as you zoomed in, you saw MLK, you're like, maybe it's over here, and you would find it and work your way into town to the right location for sure. So makes it pretty nice. Yeah, and being by some big landmarks, definitely a nice thing for us, make it easy. But unfortunately, at least in my mind, it was too easy because I don't like it when 25K is achievable for about half the field. I like it when 25K is kind of that almost unreachable standard that we're all shooting for.
Yeah,
But,
for consistency's sake, I have to complain about the locations all being very central apart from that one. Because Austin, like, is a very big city, area-wise as well. And, like, if you take the north half of Austin, I don't think we were there at all. We kind of had 4 locations right around the center and one in sort of the south half of Austin. And
yeah, and there's plenty of good, like, even landmarks and stuff you could have gotten in the southern part or more northern part of the city that you could have used. So it wasn't like it would have made it harder, but it just would have been nice to maybe have been spread out a little bit more.
Yeah, have a location a location at the Heart Hospital of Austin, for example, which is in the Triangle State. Interesting district name. In the northern part of Austin, just to balance it out.
Something like that. But yeah, so yeah, let's jump into those result tables. As you're gonna see here, 25K was definitely achievable or near it in both the feature race and the sprint race. So let's take a look at that feature race first. 4 drivers getting that perfect score, including Calamity. I think your first podium there in second.
Not my first podium, no. I had one before,
okay.
yeah. I was third in... What was I third in? Maybe...
Is it a sprint race?
I'm not sure. I definitely had a podium
Okay.
before.
Well, I'll give you a chance to find it as I go through the field here.
Okay.
Yeah, Orpheus, though, also getting a top podium. Very nice for him. Simi and Steal This Nick rounding out those top 4 and perfect scores. Max FI, Wakelock, and Bearfish Bear, as Calamity mentioned, all losing just 3 points in that one round, puts them in 5th through 7th place. Closed, me, and Slovakole rounding out the top 10. Deep Thought just outside. A bit of a disappointing showing for both Mr. Blue and M the Baseman. Well, for Katsuruvatsa, will cost them a position or two in the Constructors Challenge, as we'll see a bit later. Rounding out the field with Jack, kind of a bad performance from him. Wakelock, Redect, and Stymphalics were Giovanni, both not even playing DNSs for them. Probably just a busy in real life week for them, so that's a bit unfortunate to finish off the week. But yeah, did you manage to find it,
Yes,
Calamity?
I was third in Montreal, so it was indeed my first feature race podium.
Yeah, first feature race podium. I remembered it was you never had a podium in a feature race, so
I came fourth in Australia.
yeah, pretty close. So yeah, so anything from you here, Calamity? Happy with your first feature race podium?
Definitely. I also got the bonus points for the fastest time in 9 minutes,
nice.
and I think it was 43 or something close to that. Yeah, 43. Other than that, congratulations to your 2 points in your home country.
There we go.
I think it's the same exact result as I had in Austria. Yep, I finished 9th in Austria.
Yeah.
Other than that, yeah, you've had some of the more, I guess you can call them favorites for good positions regularly, I guess. Mr. Blue down in 13th, Tall Impala in 14th. M the Basement has had pretty bad form during the course, but he just based on skill, he should also be up there. Yeah, as you said, Stymphalics, Giovanni not playing. But yeah, at the top, sort of the people that you could come to expect over the course of the season, that to be sort of up there. I think still this Nick has generally had like either 25Ks or like very mediocre performances. It's either like all or nothing for him.
Go back.
Just from what I remember, at least. I also think, like, again, just by personal impression, but I don't think we've had Wakelock in sort of the middle of the points a lot. I think he's either been as well, like right up there, like even podium places, or just not that high up.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's
he did have his first race as a promoted driver from Formula 2. He knocked it out of the park. Was that, which race was that? He stood in it looks like maybe Singapore. That's not right. There's more weeks here. Where are we? Here we go.
Wakelock started pretty early on.
Australian. There we go. He got third as a sub in Australia.
In the first race.
So in the first week, yeah.
Yeah.
That's why it was so far. And then he replaced a driver not too long after that to take his place. But yeah, other than that, he hasn't really been close to the top too much.
Yeah. That's what I've been saying. He has definitely in a couple of races. He's been second in the sprint race in Singapore and fourth in the feature race there. He's been... did he have anything else? I could have sworn there was one more. He's been fifth in the sprint race in Austria and fourth in the sprint race in Brazil. But nothing much really between like 6th and 10th place. The other results of him were all sort of like, except for one or two here or there, all sort of like 15th or below.
Yeah. Yeah, and you were in the same thing for Steal This Nick. I looking back through some of the races, he is literally in the top 3 or 4, or he's in the bottom 3 or 4. So he's either got it or he doesn't in a lot of these races throughout the season. So yeah, a bit of probably something to work on in the off season or into the Reddit League is to kind of even out, be more consistent for him.
Yeah.
So
I mean, Steal This Nick is taking part in the Reddit League, same as Wakelock actually. So they'll have a lot of time there to improve and make sure they're ready for the next season.
yeah, indeed. Yeah, I losing as many points as I did in the feature race. I'm really happy that I was in the top 10 at all. To be honest, I thought it would be a little bit tighter. I figured losing over 50 points I would be out of it, and I almost was. But just very, very close. Definitely, with given the locations we had, and I was just really surprised that some people didn't get closer to a 25K who I would have expected to push me out. So maybe a little bit more of somebody else faltering more than me doing really well, which sounds crazy that I lost 58 points, but in that C definitely was 25Kable. So yeah. But yeah, picked up a few more points. Didn't get no points at all in the season, coming in very late as a sub driver. So I'm happy with that. Yeah, let's look at those sprint race locations. And unlike the feature race, you needed 25K to earn points because the top 10 people all got 25K. Max and Steal This Nick both getting 14 meters, with Jack only a meter off for those top 3 pole positions. Tall Impala making up for his poor showing in the feature race here with 4th place finish. But again, 2 bad performances from Katsurivatsa and Mr. Blue and M the Baseman, way out of the points. Not even getting anywhere close to 25K in the 20,000 point range there for them. Calamity 9th.
Yeah.
Again, perfect score, but just the distance quickly pushing you down the standings there. So.
Yeah, that's always going to be my problem. It's just not something I'm very good at. I've mentioned this before as well. And if you have to be like, if you're 30 meters away and you come 9th, it kind of hurts. I was also very quick with the sprint race. Not that having more time would have helped me, or spending more time would have helped me get closer. Because for me, I think I've said this before as well, but it's never really a time of, if I had spent 1 more minute, I would have gotten like 2 meters closer. No, I wouldn't have, because I just can't tell. Spending more time on it isn't going to help. I would be interested. It's always, the issue of for the sprint race, because time isn't like, it doesn't matter. So it doesn't get publicized anywhere. And if you want to know how long people actually took out of their time limit, you have to go through every seed and play them and, get to the results screen. So I, couldn't be bothered. But I would have been interested to see how long all of those people that got a perfect score took for that. Apart from that, you see again Steal This Nick 2nd, Wakelock 17th, staying true to what we said before, either top or bottom. Giovanni not playing the sprint race either. Apart from that, as you said, Katsurivatsa having a pretty bad showing there. And apart from that, sort of what you've come to expect, as I've said before, during the season. Redirect again, getting points in the sprint race, as he always does.
I can tell you that, we don't know the breakdown of every single driver, but the people with 25K are kind of all over the place. You and Jack had some of the longest times, but also people like, who else? Orpheus, Tall Impala also had some of the shortest times. Same with Redirect. So it was pretty much, again, the time wasn't the factor here. It really was how good you are at pinpointing your exact location, and having an extra minute or 30 seconds even wasn't going to really change that. You could either do it or you couldn't do it in even the short amount of time.
I had, like, just based off of time limit, I had over 14 minutes theoretically to complete the seed. It took me less than 6 minutes to do it. So it definitely, time limit wasn't the problem there.
Great. Well, this was the final week, so let's look at these standings and how they shaped out and who we're going to crown as champion. And Calamity, it should come as no surprise, it's closed 24/7. He did lose that top spot a few times throughout the season, but I think for almost 8 weeks out of the 10, he was in that number 1 position, and he wins by 5 points. Jack making it a little bit close there at the end. Mr. Blue, the next biggest challenger up until this point, dropping all the way down to 4th in the final standings, with a strong showing in the sprint race for Tall Impala there. Max FI and Steal This Nick rounding out those top 5 or 6 places. In the middle of the pack, a few big names that we kind of, I think at the beginning of the season, we would have expected to be a little bit further up. Simi and Stimfalix and Giovanni there. You, Calamity, pretty consistent. Always in that middle 10th position around there. I don't think you moved much at all through the season. It'd be nice to... So there's some graphs if you folks want to go check out the spreadsheets that have been posted over there. You can see how those positions have moved. And let me look at Calamity here. Yeah, you are literally always around that 11th, 10th place once things settled in after the first few weeks. So not a whole lot of movement from you there at all. Other than that, pretty much what we'd expected. A few of the drivers towards the bottom, go easy on them. People like me, Sir Lemons, Wakelock are all substitute drivers who came in towards the midway or later part of the season, so we're not going to be picking up as many points as some others with that. But
Yeah.
anything from you here, Calamity, and congrats to Close one more time.
Yeah, Close definitely a deserved winner there. But we didn't really have anyone who stood out that much above all others. With the way the point system is set up, it wouldn't have surprised me at the start of the season if we had like one or two people like really running away with it and being like 70, 80 points ahead. But you've got 40 points separating the top 7. So it's really close between all of them. I wasn't as consistently in that sort of area as you mentioned before, just looking at my graph right now. I was 5th after, like I started out in 9th and was 5th for 2 weeks. And then came a gradual decline. The Canada GP was still all right with that podium in Montreal I mentioned before. And then I think I picked up like very low double digits of points over the next 5 races. And then he sort of, made some spots back in the last race. Apart from that, we'll have to see how the, let's call it spot allocation for the next season goes. Whether the people who are down at the bottom or towards the bottom will get to stay in their seat and get to have another go at Formula G, or whether they'll possibly be out of contract, so to say. But yeah, apart from that, I think most of it wasn't too surprising. Maybe Jack, definitely a surprise because I hadn't heard of him before, up there in 2nd place. Apart from that, mostly the people you'd expect, even though the order might be not exactly what you'd think it would have been at the start of the season.
Yeah, I mean, not too many big surprises. What was a little bit surprising for me is that Closed and Max FI were in Division 4 in the Reddit League that finished not too long before Formula G started. So for them going to competing at like the lowest tier of Reddit League to being in the top 5 and Closed winning Formula G is really just an interesting move from them. So I'm definitely going to be looking forward to see how their form carries over in Division 3 with Reddit League starting tomorrow. Oh, today. Sorry. Actually, we're a little bit behind due to my and your crazy schedules when recording this video. But yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because you mentioned it that this is the first season of Formula G. Hopefully Ben's going to do this again. And we're not really sure how the off season is going to work. I think we're all discussing that with him, giving him some ideas, and he's thinking about it. But I think the top drivers in each of the teams can pretty much be safe, but those second drivers, or even maybe adding a third driver, could shuffle things up quite a bit. Of course, people could choose not to continue, so that could definitely shake up the field quite a bit. But I think the off season in this one's going to be really fun to follow and watch and see how that happens. So yeah. Well, let's move on to then the Constructor Challenge and crown those Constructor Cup, those team champions. And again, Oberhausen, lifted mainly by that strong performance by Closed, got the first position in the first week and never lost it. A couple of challengers rose to that second place position to give them a run for their money, but they never actually slipped. And as you can see, they take that top spot by quite a wide margin for them. Katsur with that poor performance in the last week dropped off quite a bit down there in 4th. Scantrum getting a little bit of a boost. And the bottom 3 as well, staying pretty consistent. Chariot, FGT, and Opava rounding out the bottom of the field. So yeah, we pretty much had almost 3 different groups. We had those top couple, we had the mid group, and the bottom 3. And not too much changed after the first couple weeks. Just a bit of shuffling in those 3 groups, Calamity.
Yeah, I saved us 9th place in the last weekend, getting 27 points in the US. So I guess like I met my goal of the week before. Would have expected a bit more at the start of the season, but nothing you can do about it. Oberhausen, like once you hit sort of a certain difference between points from first to second, you're not going to see much change. unless something very unexpected happens. And they just continued racking up points every week, and it didn't matter which country really, just add a couple points on here, add a win there, add a podium there, and suddenly you've won with 74 points ahead of Scanstrom. And then you've got another pretty big gap of 56 points to Octane. And then everything's pretty close together there between third and seventh. That could have really gone either way, just a couple of results going a different way. And you could have seen Nordhagen finish third. And yeah, then us three down there. We'll see if next season we can improve that.
Yeah. What's really interesting is I'm looking at the original driver allocation to the team. So remember that in preseason, the top 20 drivers, it was kind of, I don't know how to describe it in a single word, but like number one driver was paired with 20th place and so on and so on. And actually, a lot of the second drivers, so the drivers who were in the bottom 10, outperformed the drivers in the top 10 of preseason. People like Jack, Orpheus, who I think gave Tall Impala a good run for his money.
I was going to say, Orpheus was nowhere near beating Tall Impala, though.
In total points?
Yeah. Tall Impala had like 180 or something, and Orpheus had 110 or something.
Oh, okay, well, it's closer than I thought it was, but he did Orpheus at least contribute quite a bit.
Yeah, Orpheus had 111 and Tall Impala had 181.
Okay. I'll jump the gun a little bit there. Closed definitely outshone Simi. Mr. Blue earned more points. So, Katsurvasa was kind of a mid-table thing, so they were pretty close to begin with. Steal This Nick doing very well, and Shumio Beloza, I think, definitely outshone Slovak. Was it? So as long as its order is correct in the spreadsheet. But yeah, of course, quite a few drivers dropped out and were replaced for that. But I think a very successful season, we can call it, Calamity. Definitely proof of concept was a success, and I think all of us will be looking forward to not only playing in this, but casting it next season when it comes around again. So, yeah. Any final thoughts, Calamity, on Formula G, on the victors, on the losers, anything like that?
You gotta
put you on the spot.
You gotta do better next season if you want to keep that spot. If you even get to keep it, last place.
I only had 3 races, so I don't know.
I mean, you took part in a lot of more before as a reserve driver. You just didn't bother putting in actual results. Just clicked through them. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, it was always like that weird thing where, like, the week I had the least amount of time was the week they're like, oh, we actually need you to count your score. And I'm like, no, like the week before that, I was in the top 5, and then, oh, we're not going to count it. And like, oh, well, now we need to count it and you're in the bottom. I'm like, of course.
Yep.
Right? The minute you're in the spotlight is when you don't want to be in the spotlight. So, yeah. But I mean, I did have a couple point positions for my overall play across Geoguessr in general. I think that was probably where I would have put myself to begin with, in just that lower 9th, 10th, 8th place right there. So that wasn't bad. I think if I would have been there for the whole season, I would have been able to get a few more points. But
maybe sneak in 16th.
Yeah, somewhere in there. But yeah. The thing is, for me, I'm consistently just outside of noteworthy position. I don't know if that's a good way to put it, but like I don't have like Sir Lemons and people like Wakelok and even Slovak Goalie towards the bottom of the table. They had 1 or 2 maps where they were really good, right? And I don't think I have because we haven't played Japan in anything. I don't have like a really good kind of map, and maybe the US or Japan is the best I could claim. And then the problem with the US is if you get a really easy seed, everybody can do really well. So, but I'm always going to do right around that 21,000, and on a really easy seed, I can do better, but then of course everybody else does better. So I need to work on like getting a better score on a seed that will be challenging for everyone. So yeah, but I have fun, enjoyed playing, and I enjoy definitely covering the competition. So I just like to be part of the group, so to speak. But yeah. So yeah. Any thoughts from you on next season? You want to stay with your with FGT, or would you like to at least for drama's sake just change team names? I don't know if it matters too much, but
I don't think it does. I like Scotland, so sure, I'd like to stay with FGT.
Are you attached to the name and whatnot?
I'm attached to the base of operations.
There you go. Yeah. Ow. What is Chariot again? Oh, Greece. I could take it or leave it. I like the color. I like the light blue. Yeah, but I think the best logo, to be honest, the logo I like the most is probably Nordhagen.
That's nice. Yeah,
I like that. It's a good logo. So I don't mind the purple color either. So I wouldn't mind switching. But we'll see how that all works out in the future. So yeah, well we've talked on for long enough already. So thank you all for watching. Thank you all for watching the entire coverage of all 10 weeks of Formula G. We really thank you for your support, and I'm sure all the drivers and Ben, the organizer, appreciate it. And it helps us stay motivated and wanting to do these kind of competitions if you guys watch these videos and things like that. So thank you all for that. And we hope to see you around for season 2. Whenever that takes place. So we'll see you then. Take care.
Bye.